I'm going to start off on a weird note. Okay, there was this guy named Henry Williams. He was a slave, got married, and had 3 children. A couple of years after getting married, his wife and children were sold. He tried not to think much of this, but one way or another, he would start thinking of them again. He was tired of this, so he decided to try and escape. He thought for a couple of weeks, then got an idea to get in a box and ship himself. And 24 painful hours later, he was out of the box and right back down to the ground. Right after he got out of the box, he couldn't take the pressure and passed out. It all started in 1861 when the South states and North states wanted to have different rights. The South wanted to have slavery and the North didn't. Slavery was a really big thing at this time and was really important because it had a big impact on the war. Like I said, the South wanted it and the North didn't. So they decided to figure out the winner by fighting. It was 22 million versus 9 million, but 4 million of these 9 million were slaves that the South didn't want to give a gun. There was a lot of bickering back and forth, and Abraham Lincoln was done with it. So he asked for volunteers to fight in the war and had them sign a 9-month contract, which goes to show how long they thought the war was going to last. Since the South seceded, which pretty much means they went off and made their own country, they decided to have a president of their own, and they voted for Jefferson Davis as their president. This is a key to show you who is on what side. If you don't know some of these people, don't worry, they'll be introduced later. After getting enough troops, the war was on. The first shot was fired by the South at Fort Sumter. 34 hours later, the North surrendered the fort. After this battle, the North was flooded with volunteers to help support from what just happened at Fort Sumter. These troops were ready for some adventure and fun. This battle led to the first Battle of Bull Run, where General Jackson set up his defenses, and after a couple of hours, he pulled out the win and surprised the North. A couple of battles later, and one of which was Chancellorsville, where the South won, but right after the win, Jackson, who was named Stonewall Jackson, got shot by one of his troops. He was coming back late at night, and one of his many nervous troops couldn't make out what he was, so they accidentally shot him. This mishap helped the North get a slight edge on the South. Now we're here at the bloodiest battle of them all, and the most important battle. It had over 22,000 deaths total, and lots of people were injured. And now we're here at the Battle of Antietam, where General Lee, who was an amazing, almost never lost amazing general, that was going to push in and surround Washington, D.C., then, from there, push into D.C. and capture D.C. and get the win. But one bad thing happened. General Lee dropped his plans, which were rolled around a cigarette butt, and a North soldier found it. This kinda messed Lee up, but not really, speaking that he was going against McClellan, who never wanted to attack. Lee quickly got some more troops, and the biggest battle of the Civil War was on. For the first time, McClellan won against Lee, and this time it was in the biggest battle yet. After the win, McClellan got fired because he wouldn't listen to Abraham's commands. This win gave the North a sigh of relief, and now it was their turn to push in and rush the South. They decided to go down the Mississippi River. Yes, Lee was the best and all, but there was someone who might be a little bit better than him. His name was General Grant. He was really good at attacking, and Lee was really good at defending. He also later became our 18th president. At the Mississippi River, General Grant was making some risky and bold moves, while General Lee pushed up to D.C. for the second time. And this time, it would be the biggest turning point of the war, because if the South won, they would capture D.C., but if the North won, then the South would run out of steam and wouldn't be able to fight back. Now it was the North who had home court advantage because the whole battle, the South had been getting attacked, so all they were doing was defending on their own land. Lee had his men attack in separate sections all at once, but Madden told his men to charge back at Lee, and they got very close to winning but were forced back. This led to a standstill where Madden built up his defense so that all Lee could do was push head on one more time. But once again, he was bounced back and forced to flee back into Virginia. Right after this retreat, after a month-long siege, Grant had won the Mississippi. Now, Grant was ordered to go east and fight against Lee. He did so and went in hard. Lee tried to fight back, but Grant kept on coming and coming. About a month later, they were in the second siege at that time. These sieges weren't good for Abraham Lincoln because his fourth year of being president was coming up, and that meant that there was going to be someone running for president against him. But luckily for Abe, McClellan, who was the person running for president against Abe, said that he would finish off the war and win, which you think would be a good speech, but at the time everyone wanted to stop war and have no more. Abe got kind of lucky because at the time of voting, the siege with Sherman was over, and Sherman had captured Atlanta, which was a big thing for the South, and Abe was voted president again. Instead of losing more men, Sherman decided to cut off his resupply and march through everything. He burned down buildings and tore up railroads. All of the damage he had done would be $1.4 billion in repair. At this point, everyone knew who was going to win the war. And to top it off, Grant versus Lee siege was over after 292 days, and Lee signed to surrender. After the war, you can imagine how destroyed and burnt down the South was, not only from Sherman. They had to spend 12 years rebuilding the South. After the win, McClellan soldier found it. This kinda lit up, but not what?